Hello and welcome to Retro Reviews, my channel where I review my favorite retro video games of all time, as well as some modern releases I have recently finished. And today I want to talk about a retro game that I really love. In fact, I think this was the very first video game I ever played. If it's not the first game I ever played, it is the earliest memory I have of playing video games. And that is Donkey Kong Country on the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. This was my very first console that I got to play around with. I had older siblings that had the console. I really loved it. I played a ton of games on that console. I remember it very fondly. And Donkey Kong Country was one of those that I really have some great core memories of in terms of my video gaming career. And I went back to it because I've only completed the whole thing a couple of times, but I've played it so many times up to like the third world or so. It is brutally difficult. This is one of the granddaddies of difficult platforming. And this game is designed super well. While it's really hard, it's designed in such a way that everything that you do, everything that you accomplish in this game is from your own skill. If you succeed, it's because you did the level really well. If you died, it's only your fault. It's never the level's fault. There's no real failings in the coding. It's just a really well designed game. Now, the graphics are also exceptional for the Super Nintendo. Occasionally, I would get very occasionally, I would get some little lag spikes if there was too much information on the screen at once, which makes sense because this is like incredible graphics for the Super Nintendo console. It's actually quite a marvel they were able to put it on this console at all. They were pushing it to its graphical limitations. They did an excellent job of doing so while also keeping it smooth pretty much the entire game. Very few issues. Otherwise, I had a smooth as butter experience playing Donkey Kong Country. I was really excited to get back into the Country series because I've just really been excited about Donkey Kong lately. I played through DK64. That was my first review video on this channel. Go check it out if you haven't seen it. It's one of my favorite games. I really love the Donkey Kong franchise in general. I beat Donkey Kong Country Returns for the 3DS. I beat Tropical Freeze on the Switch. And I'm really waiting for a new Donkey Kong game to come. I'm really getting excited about it. So I'm trying to play through all the Donkey Kong games and kind of get my thoughts back out on them before they hopefully announce one for either the Switch at the end of its life cycle or the Switch 2 coming up, because I have heard some rumors. But back to the review. So Donkey Kong Country is just fantastic. There are 7 main worlds in this game. The first one we start off with is Jungle Japes, and the last one is Gangplank Galleon, which is just the boss fight. There's no actual levels in that one, and a smattering of other worlds in between. You have one with a mines area. You have a vines area, which is kind of funny. Very similar feel to the Jungle Japes, but definitely more difficult. As the game progresses, naturally the difficulty is going to go up. You have an industrial area. You have a glacial area. It's really well designed in terms of the theming that they did. When you get to the ice area, the terrain is slippery, which makes the game, usually that's a really bad thing for games, but it actually feels pretty good for this platforming. You have a lot of dynamic movement now, since your Kong can just keep sliding as you go. It adds a level of difficulty on top of the already brutal platforming. So you start off playing as Donkey Kong, and if you get a little buddy barrel, the DK barrels on each level, you get Diddy Kong as a backup character. That means if you get hit, you automatically switch to the other guy, and then you have to keep continuing on throughout the level until you find another barrel or you beat the level. This gives you essentially a 2-life system at any given point until you can get another barrel, or if you can just keep them together, that's even better. You can freely switch between Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong, but Donkey Kong is typically the better character in almost every way. The only perceivable difference I can see that Diddy Kong has an advantage, and it might just be in my own head, honestly, is that with Diddy Kong, if you do a cartwheel off stage, you can fall for a couple of frames, and then you can jump mid-air. It gives you banana indicators to show you how far you can go in a lot of the levels early on, so you know this mechanic. Diddy Kong's feels a little easier to execute. It feels like you have a bigger window to jump out of. It's kind of weird. It's hard to explain. But Donkey Kong can also do this. It just feels different. The timing does not match up. Diddy Kong's just feels easier to execute. And that might just be my opinion again. Everything else, Donkey Kong is the superior character. He can jump on the big Kremlings that come by. You have these big hulking ones. You have the muscly ones. You can jump on them and kill them with Donkey Kong. But if you jump on them with Diddy Kong, you bounce right off. And on later levels, especially like the second to last world, they have like platforms that move and nothing else below you. So you jump onto a new platform, and if there's a Kremling there, you just bounce off them and you die. They'll give you barrels to chuck at them, but Donkey Kong is just so much better. There are so many times where I would jump with Diddy Kong, across a gap or a little chasm, whatever it is, and I would have one of those guys right at the edge and I'd bounce off of him and die unexpectedly, and it was kind of frustrating. So Donkey Kong is clearly the better character here. No shade to Diddy Kong. He's also he's very passable. I like the character himself a lot. I actually really love Diddy Kong. I think he's very cool. I like having the variety between the two. I like that they are different, but Donkey Kong is definitely the way to go. You also have animal companions that you can ride on. You have a rhino, an ostrich, a frog, and also a swordfish. These give you lots of mobility options, and they give you sometimes attack options, like Rambi the Rhino gives you a horned attack. It will also break open secret areas. These can be found by throwing barrels at certain walls. Rambi will automatically open them if you get close to them, which is very, very cool. You have the frog that can jump really high. You have the ostrich that can flutter down. He can kind of glide through the air. You also have the swordfish that gives you a lot of mobility in the water levels and an attacking. The only thing that you can do to attack enemies is with the swordfish character. So, and let's touch on the water levels now that I'm here. This game actually does water levels very well. And part of that is the music. The music is so serene and wonderful. This is probably the best Waterworld music ever composed. And the water levels are actually fun to complete. They don't feel too tedious or difficult. It's actually a good time. Now, I think in 3D games, that's typically the stigma is the water levels suck. But I think in a lot of games, especially back in the day, you have stuff like the dam level in the NES Ninja Turtles game that absolutely was abysmal. But they executed it very well in this game, and I have to applaud them because water levels are tricky to do, but they work really, really well. There's like a whole world themed around the water area, and you have several underwater sections that kind of just rock. They're really fun. And usually they have a hidden swordfish companion that you can go find. And if you can do that, you suddenly have way more mobility and an attacking option, which is fantastic. The boss battles in Donkey Kong Country are pretty good overall. They're nothing crazy, they're fairly basic, but they work exactly the way you want them to. The first boss that you come up against is a big bird. You have a tire in the middle that you can bounce on, and you can clock him in the head a few times and he goes down. You have other ones like throwing a barrel at this giant bee that goes around. They're pretty serviceable. They're pretty good. The very last boss, King K. Rool, is super fun. Very well designed. The Gangplank Galleon song is perfect. It's fantastic. I love that they've integrated that into K. Rool's theme song in Smash Brothers. I quite enjoy the boss fights. They're nothing too crazy, but they are a lot of fun and very well designed. Overall, the platforming is just really solid. This isn't a super long game. I'm quite an experienced platformer, so it took me about 2.5 hours. It'll probably take you longer if you haven't played a lot of platformers or if you're not familiar with Donkey Kong Country, because like I said, it is really difficult. But if you get the hang of it and you can learn the mechanics pretty easily or pretty early on and get them down, you should be able to complete this in not too long of a time. And it is highly recommendable. So I really recommend you go try this one out. It's super fun. I really enjoy it. This is the genesis of Donkey Kong. So it's really cool to get the nostalgia out and experience the franchise from the very beginning. I'm going to give Donkey Kong Country a platinum rank. Thank you so much, and I will see you on the next one.